Last night at 11:41, an earthquake struck the ocean floor off Vancouver Island, and when I saw where it hit, I stopped what I was doing. Not because a 5.6 is the biggest earthquake we have ever seen. It is not, but because this earthquake struck in a location that scientists have been staring at with genuine unease for weeks. A location where a study published just days ago revealed something beneath the ocean that nobody expected to find. The ground beneath the northern Cascadia fault is breaking apart, not slowly drifting, not cracking in the way scientists assumed. Breaking, coming apart in sections. And last night, something moved in exactly that zone. Subscribe and turn on notifications right now. Because what is happening off the coast of Vancouver Island is the most important geological story in the Pacific Northwest this year, and it is not getting the attention it deserves. Here is what we know about last night. At 11:41 p.m. Pacific Time, a magnitude 5.6 earthquake struck 219 kilometers southwest of Port Hardy at the northern tip of Vancouver Island, 10 kilometers below the ocean floor. No tsunami warning. The shaking was felt across parts of British Columbia, around Puget Sound, and into Washington state. No major damage, no casualties reported. But here is what the USGS moment tensor analysis revealed about how the fault moved. This was a strike-slip earthquake. The two sides of the fault slid sideways past each other. That is fundamentally different from the movement that would signal the Cascadia megathrust beginning to rupture. The megathrust produces vertical movement, one plate thrusting beneath the other, seafloor displaced upward or downward, water column displaced, tsunami energy released. That is not what happened last night. So this was not the big one. Let me be clear about that. But here is what makes the location of this earthquake so significant that seismologists woke up and paid attention. 3 weeks ago, a research team published findings in the journal Science Advances that changed how scientists understand the northern end of the Cascadia fault. They had used deep penetrating sound waves from the 2021 Cascadia seismic imaging experiment to build the clearest picture ever made of the plate structure beneath this section of the ocean. And what those images showed stopped the research team in their tracks. The Explorer plate is tearing itself apart. Not metaphorically, not gradually, in the way that plates slowly drift and shift over millions of years in a way humans can ignore. There are two active tears cutting through the subducting plate. The largest is 35 kilometers long. It drops 5 kilometers straight down through solid rock. 5 kilometers. That is over 16,000 feet of vertical displacement in what should be a solid slab of ocean crust. And it is still growing. Along the sections of the tear, where the break has already propagated fully through the plate, the rock produces zero seismic signal. Nothing. Because there is nothing left to grind. That section has already separated. The plate is gone there, and the zone of silence is advancing. Here is why that silence should concern you more than the earthquakes. When a fault section goes quiet, it typically means one of two things. Either the stress in that area has been released and the rock is no longer under tension, or the rock has separated entirely and is no longer in contact with anything that could produce friction. In the Explorer plate, the imaging data points strongly to the second explanation. The plate is not resting. It is gone. And where one section has fully detached, the mechanical load it was previously carrying gets redistributed to the sections still connected on either side. That redistribution of stress is what connects the Explorer plate tears to the broader Cascadia hazard. Every section that separates quietly changes the stress environment for everything around it. Last night's earthquake struck in this exact system. Now I want to be precise here, because precision is what separates this kind of coverage from clickbait. The USGS places the epicenter slightly west of the main documented tear, on the oceanic side of the zone before the plate reaches the main subduction interface beneath Vancouver Island. The earthquake most likely ruptured a steep local fault inside the Explorer plate, or one of the many fracture strands that the seismic imaging experiment revealed running through this zone. We cannot identify the exact fault strand from the moment tensor alone without more data. But it does not need to be on the exact tear to matter. It happened in the same broken, actively deforming system. And that system is the part of the Cascadia fault that scientists consider most geologically complex, least well understood, and most likely to behave in ways that existing hazard models do not fully predict. Here is why the Explorer Plate is so different from the rest of Cascadia. The Juan de Fuca Plate, which makes up most of the Cascadia subduction zone from northern California southward, moves toward the continent at roughly 4 centimeters per year. Steady, consistent. The kind of movement that accumulates stress predictably and builds toward the megathrust rupture that has happened at least 13 times in the past 6,000 years. The Explorer Plate moves at about half that speed, approximately 2 centimeters per year. Some sections even slower. And it is not just moving more slowly, it is being squeezed from multiple directions simultaneously, pushed by the Juan de Fuca Plate to the south, by the Pacific Plate to the west, by North America bearing down from above. Different sections of the plate are moving at different speeds and in different directions. The crust cannot behave as one rigid block under those conditions. It has to deform internally, bend, rotate, shear, and when the stress exceeds what the rock can hold, it breaks. That 35-kilometer tear, that 5-kilometer vertical drop, that advancing zone of silence where the plate has already come apart, that is 4 million years of this process made visible for the first time. And last night, something moved in that zone. Was it a foreshock? Here is the honest answer. Right now, there is no evidence that it was. The vast majority of magnitude 5.6 earthquakes are main shocks, not precursors to something larger. The permanent stress change from a 5.6 is concentrated near its own small rupture and does not suddenly load the entire Cascadia megathrust to failure. A magnitude 9.0 Cascadia event releases 126,000 times more energy than last night's earthquake. These are not comparable events on any meaningful scale. But foreshocks are only identified as foreshocks after the larger earthquake follows. You cannot know in the moment. Venezuela proved that this year, a magnitude 7.2 followed 39 seconds later by a 7.5. Nobody knew the first was a foreshock until the second arrived. What seismologists are watching right now is the aftershock pattern. If aftershocks develop and start migrating eastward toward the locked subduction interface beneath Vancouver Island, that changes the assessment. If they disperse harmlessly into the ocean plate, this becomes a scientifically interesting event in a complicated zone that did not escalate further. As of this recording, a magnitude 4.5 aftershock has been recorded. The pattern is still developing. Now let me connect this to the bigger picture. Because the comment that keeps appearing under earthquake videos right now, and I have read hundreds of them, is some version of this. Something is not right. Too many earthquakes, too much happening at once. And I want to give that comment a serious answer rather than dismissing it. The planet is not more active than usual in terms of a total earthquake count. That number is relatively stable. What is changing is where the stress is concentrating and what is visible to us now that we have better tools to see it. The Cascadia imaging experiment showed us tears in the Explorer Plate that have been there for millions of years, but that we could not image clearly until 2021. The San Andreas study published in June showed that Southern California's fault system has reached its highest stress in 1,000 years. The Venezuelan earthquake revealed just how catastrophically unprepared certain cities remain for events that geology guarantees will happen. We are not seeing more earthquakes. We are seeing further into the ground than we ever have before. And what we are seeing there is a planet whose fault systems are loaded, stressed, and in some cases already breaking, in ways that the scientific community is only now beginning to fully understand. The northern Cascadia zone, where last night's earthquake struck, is the most complex and least understood section of the fault system, capable of producing the largest earthquake in North American history. That complexity is not reassuring. It means the behavior models built on simpler sections of the fault may not apply here. It means the next rupture, when it comes, may not follow the script. For anyone living in Seattle, Portland, Victoria, or Vancouver, the preparedness guidance has not changed. Know your evacuation route. Have supplies for 72 hours. When shaking starts, drop, cover, and hold on. The Shake Alert system in the US and its Canadian equivalent will give you seconds of warning before the destructive waves arrive. Those seconds matter more than most people realize. Let me put the Cascadia megathrust in concrete terms, because most people who live within its reach have never fully visualized what a full rupture actually looks like from the ground. The shaking would last between 4 and 6 minutes, not seconds. Minutes. 4 to 6 minutes of continuous violent ground motion across the entire Pacific Northwest simultaneously. Every building, every bridge, every overpass, every gas main, every water pipe in Seattle, Portland, Victoria, and Vancouver, shaking for longer than most people have ever experienced in their lives. The 2011 Tohoku earthquake in Japan, which killed nearly 20,000 people, lasted approximately 6 minutes. Japan was prepared for it. The Pacific Northwest is not. 15 to 30 minutes after the shaking stops, the first tsunami waves would reach the coastline. Oregon and Washington's coastal communities would have that window to reach high ground. Some of those communities have vertical evacuation towers built specifically for this scenario. Most do not. And 15 minutes sounds like a long time until you are in a car that cannot move because the roads are cracked and blocked with debris and everyone else is trying to leave at the same time. FEMA has modeled the full Cascadia scenario. Their projections estimate more than 11,000 deaths, 27,000 injuries, and up to 1 million people needing immediate shelter. Those numbers assume a rupture of the full fault length. The infrastructure damage, bridges, roads, ports, power grids, water systems, would leave the region effectively cut off for days in some areas, weeks in others. That is the event that the locked Cascadia interface is building toward. That is what the Explorer plate tears, the stress accumulation, and last night's earthquake all exist within the shadow of. What changed last night is the picture of the geology. The northern Cascadia zone just reminded us it is active, complicated, and not done moving. Subscribe and hit the bell. Because the aftershock pattern from last night's earthquake is still developing. And in a zone where scientists found a 5-kilometer vertical tear in the ocean floor just weeks ago, staying informed is not optional.